yeah, if I see one more post about, I'm not voting for either party. What has the Democrats done for Black people?
Oh, shoot.
Who, if no tangibles, no vote. Okay, I get the tangibles. We need tangibles, but how, sir and ma'ams, are you providing the tangibles? What are you doing to make their, what are you doing? What's your strategy for these tangibles? I'm here for the tangibles. Let me just say, I'm in line for the reparations. I am, and I would qualify. That said, under your rubric, I would qualify. But that said, what's the strategy here? Sitting home, writing in Cornel West, voting for Cornel West. Voting for Robert Kennedy Jr. What's the strategy here? And then how does that gain power for the rest of us? Because anything else is selfish. And I'm not shaming, this is just civics. So I'm gonna need people to have like a really quick civics lesson and just study. So we're gonna do something really quickly. I'm gonna invite my special co-host in because I want to do a really quick civics lesson today. In the wake of this, 9 people running for the speaker, and then there was this post. Let me see if I can find the post. Where's the post? I can't find the post now. Anyway, there was a post that basically said, Joe Biden, it's Biden's fault that this is happening under Biden. We didn't have any war like this under Trump. All of the things that are going on in the country is because of Biden. The economy is because of Biden. And I was like, like the lack of civics, the lack of civic engagement, the lack of understanding of how government works is stunning. So I want to do first, let me let Colorful Stories, Color FULL Story. She's been on the show. She doesn't put her name out because, she lives in Texas and death threats happen, which is really weird. When you tell the truth, people get mad. And so she doesn't use her name, but she's been on the show. She's a former school teacher. And so she's speaking on a post that says all of this is Biden's fault, even the mess in Congress. So I'm going to play this clip and then I'm going to give you some facts. Play it.
Okay. Whew. So I have a question. Do you think that when a president becomes the commander-in-chief of the United States of America, the head of the executive branch, that those in the judicial branch and those in the legislative branch are all elected at the same time? Do you think when the previous administration leaves office, they take everybody in the legislative and the judicial branch with them? The Supreme Court has lifetime appointed positions, which means these people, these judges, like Clarence Thomas, has been in office for decades. He didn't just go away. We have new conservative judges that help overturn Roe v. Wade underneath the Biden administration. Biden is not a dictator. There's a such thing as checks and balances. People do not vote in the midterms the way that they need to vote, which is why we are having chaos in Congress. I really think that it's getting worse and worse when it comes to American civics and understanding how our government works. And it's
stunning. All right. That was Colorful Story. And the post that she was referring to said that under Biden, Roe v. Wade got overturned. So this was what she was responding to. I had a post in my YouTube comments that said, we didn't have any conflicts in the Middle East under Trump. Our economy was booming under Trump. We got stimulus checks under Trump. Why would I vote for Biden? Under the Republican, I was like, Jesus, Roe v. Wade was overturned under Biden. Inflation is robbing us under Biden. These are the comments I'm seeing a lot. I just want to remind people of the facts. Let me welcome my co-host for the day, and he is, of course, the author of 16 books. He's working on a documentary as well that will be out, I think, later on this year or next year, early next year. He also has an album out from his latest book, Grocery Shopping with My Mother. Actually, his latest book is the Kevin Powell Reading Essential Writings and Conversations, creator of Grocery Shopping with My Mother, the album and the book out now. Civil rights, human rights activist, the one and only Kevin Powell. Hi.
Hey, it's great to see you. Great to hear you. Civics, I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
All right, let's start with three branches of government. Let's start there. So it's the executive branch, the judicial branch, and the legislative branch.
Yeah, okay. The basics.
So the executive branch is the president. And the president is the commander in chief of the military and our statesman for the world, shows up to the summit. The president can have veto power and the president can do executive orders, but they don't stick because the president does not make laws. The legislative branch makes laws, and that consists of the Senate and the House of Representatives. The Senate, that's where Mitt Romney and Tim Scott and Cory Booker, and that's where those folk are. And that's where Vice President Kamala Harris was before she became vice president. The Senate, 6-year term, and then you run for re-election. The House, 2-year term, you run for re-election, which is why the midterms are important, because these motherfuckers turn over very quickly when you show up to vote. Okay. All right. But this is where the chaos is right now, because they have to put forth bills, which is why it was ridiculous that Jim Jordan was even putting his hat in the ring to be speaker in 16 years, has never put forth a single bill, has done no legislation in the legislative branch. How does he even think he should be sitting in that seat? That notwithstanding, they put forth bills, the bills get signed and ratified there, and then they send it off to the Senate. The Senate then sends it off to the president. The president either vetoes or signs it in. That's how our laws are made. Then you have the judicial branch, which is supposed to be like this three-headed, checks and balances type of thing. Each of them check each other, except for now where we have a Supreme Court full of people appointed by people who Trump liked, which means that they are activist judges, which means that they have the express, like Amy Coney Barrett and Brett Kavanaugh, and them were put on specifically to overturn Roe v. Wade, to overturn affirmative action. They lied during their confirmation hearings. This was why they were put on this bench, right? And they have a job for life. As we see Clarence Thomas in many, 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 many cases of what we would call corruption and all kind of inappropriate relationships with donors. He has a job for life. And I don't think there's been a Supreme Court justice that has been impeached, not in recent memory. It's very hard to do. It's a job for life. So they're spanning many presidents. They're supposed to have that kind of autonomy. But now we've hit the critical point of our democracy, where we have a House, a judicial branch, and our president, who I feel is hampered by a extreme amount of ignorance, Kevin, extreme amount of ignorance. And this is what is completely killing. It's not about Democrats and Republicans at this point. It's about common civics.
Can I jump in?
Yes. Please.
My gosh. You're saying a lot. And, Karen, for listeners who don't know, I actually studied political science in college at Rutgers University, which has one of the best poli-sci programs in the country. And I also ran for Congress twice. And I take, because of my mom coming from the South and migrating up to the North, I took seriously voting because she knew what it was like not to be able to vote, growing up in South Carolina, where she's from. And so I've been voting since I was 18. And a lot of things you said just hit me. There's always been two parties in this country's history, you know what I mean? And they weren't always called Democrats and Republicans. People just need to go back and do their research. But I think the thing we need to understand that, this is the first time in our history where we see this incredible, and Ali Veshi said it on your show when I co-hosted a couple weeks ago. This is about democracy, because I can say to you that a Republican named Tom Kaine, when he was a young state assemblyman in our home state of New Jersey, was affected by all the unrest that was happening in places like Newark, New Jersey, Detroit, Michigan, and he helped to pass legislation that created the Educational Opportunity Fund that made it possible for people like me to go to college, first-generation college students in the state of New Jersey. And so there was always whether there's always been differences between the two parties, but there also was always some kind of conscious effort to make sure we're looking out for the American people. That's not the case now, as we see all this silliness happening, and really it's tragic what's happening with the Republican Party, where they can't even support each other. I mean, literally 9 people, as you said, are running for the speaker seat. And you're right, a basic criteria of a congressional member is, have you had any bills attached to your name? Have you passed any legislation? Jim Jordan really was David Duke. I mean, he's someone who's just, I mean, Matt Gaetz, who got Kevin McCarthy kicked out in the first place, was like, I don't even care. I don't care. I just wanted to cause havoc. And so it's saying to us, it's like, they don't care about the American people. So if y'all who are caught up in the parties, they don't care about any of you, is what they're saying. It's like, we don't care if the government shuts down. We don't care about folks in the military getting paid. We don't care about government workers getting paid, because that's what's ultimately going to happen. But meanwhile, their checks as elected officials will keep coming. And so, Karen is right. The thing that has struck me, Karen, and that's not just looking at our country. If you look at countries like places like Australia, 80% of their citizens vote on a regular basis. Here, when I was running for Congress back in 2008, 2010, give you some examples of this, we're lucky if 20 to 30% of the people in my district actually voted on a regular basis. We were hoping for 20 to 30%. There's 3 million people in Brooklyn alone. And so we were just hoping that 100,000, 200,000 people showed up to vote for in the election for Congress. And to your point, they're there every 2 years. There's the election every 2 years, and people are like, why is this happening? It's because there's a wing of the Republican Party, a radical right wing, that is very different than what we've seen, because Tom Kaine, Rockefeller, we can go to Eisenhower. Dwight Eisenhower was a Republican president of the United States in the 1950s, but he also gave an incredible speech when he was leaving the White House as John Kennedy was about to become president, talking about the military-industrial complex. This is someone who was a World War II hero who served in the military. He's like, we need to chill with all this violence. This is a Republican saying that. So it's not as simple as like, well, it's just them. I'm like, no, what's shifted in the country, I believe, is just a reckless disregard by elected officials of all backgrounds, all parties, who don't care about people. I mean, it's just that simple. And unfortunately, that wing that you're talking about, the MAGA people, the right wingers, they're dominating in a way that is literally handcuffing the entire country. That's the problem. But it's not just this party versus that party. It's also knowing the history when we talk about civics. Like, how do we get here when we actually, Tom Kaine said to me, I sat down with him in his home in New Jersey, his office in New Jersey a couple of years ago, just to thank him for creating that program over 50 years ago. He's like, and he even said to me, this is not the party that I grew up in. This is not the Republican Party I grew up in. This is not it. I'm trying to see what happened.
It's the same thing. This weekend, I watch CBS Sunday Morning is my jam Sunday. Mitt Romney, and it's the first time I'm actually going to buy this book and read it. Yeah. Because I'm a little skeptical of these political books, because it's just like, it's a money grab for a lot of folk, or fundraising. But he's not running again for the Senate, so he's saying all of the things, right? And his wife was there at the end to explain what Oprah reached out for him to run as an independent against Trump and Biden, which I thought was interesting. But he was talking about this very thing. His father, George Romney, who was the Michigan governor, marched in the civil rights because he was disgusted by what was happening around civil rights. And I'm not saying Romney's great. I actually got banned from MSNBC for saying he wanted to be president of Caucasian. That turned into a whole skit on Jon Stewart's. Larry Wilmer did a whole skit. Where's Caucasian? And it was from something I said on MSNBC, and they sat my ass down, didn't tell me to my face, but I heard through the grapevine. That was why. Because I'm like, your commercial doesn't show anything. And every time you show that little black grandchild every now and then, we're not impressed, sir. You live in Utah. Stop it. You're homogenous. You don't really see the world. But compared to what we're dealing with now, Mitt Romney's a damn near civil rights activist. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy town. It's crazy. Mother freaking crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
What else is crazy is, because we're in this TikTok era, we don't have the fortitude, or maybe there's the muscle to sit in something long enough to see it to fruition. We want instant gratification all the way around, and we have instant criticism as if things don't take time. You think about how many times Lincoln ran before he won. Just putting that into perspective, right? Lincoln lost so many times before he actually won his Senate seat and then the presidency. and won by a thin margin, if we want to have that discussion. But I'm thinking just even right now, you talk about Roe v. Wade, you talk about affirmative action. That was 20 something years that group of people funded very heavily by billionaires who wanted to see that go. They started in Texas and they kept banging on that thing 20 plus years to get the kind of court that they needed. They had so many lower cases go up that were rejected. They came back in with this North Carolina and this Harvard one, and they got it through. That was a 20-year journey. Didn't just happen. Affirmative action. Roe v. Wade didn't just happen. And then I'm thinking about also all of this talk about the economy was good under Trump. Hell, we were in a pandemic. Most of us were sitting our asses down. Companies flourished. There were record profits that were fomented during COVID-19.
Yeah.
Because we weren't using gas, we weren't using our cars, we weren't out in the streets. It was, a lot of PPP money, which was your tax dollars going back to you. There were the stimulus checks, there were the child tax credits. There were so many things that were there to stimulate the economy, which is why we didn't fall into a recession. But that happened because of Nancy Pelosi and them and a Democratic Congress, the legislative branch, by the way. Okay, not Trump. He put his name on the damn checks, but he didn't make that happen. But I do want to remind people, that every single in the last 20, 30, 40 years, every single Republican has driven the economy into the ground, and the Democrats have had to dig it out. And I'm going to give you one. Clinton, from Reagan to Clinton. Was it Reagan to Clinton? Bush to Clinton. Bush to Clinton. I'm sorry. Bush to Clinton. Clinton was elected. First Bush to Clinton, Daddy Bush to Clinton. 1992, before Clinton took over, 10 million Americans were unemployed. The country faced record deficits, poverty, welfare rolls were growing, family incomes were losing ground to inflation, jobs weren't being created. They were being created at the slowest rate since the Great Depression. Record budget deficits became, record budget deficits were in effect under Bush. Who was carrying the water for Reagan. That's why I keep saying Reagan. When Clinton took over, when he finally came into office, 22 million new jobs. There's something going on with your audio. 22 million new jobs. Yep. Oh, my goodness. All right. What is going on? All right. 22 million new jobs were created. Unemployment, core inflation at its lowest levels. This is Clinton. 30 years. He had 8 years to do this, by the way. He left office with America having a surplus. Let me just say, Clinton's record in Rwanda, Clinton's record in Haiti, we can sit here all day and excoriate Bill Clinton welfare, which the crime bill, which the Congressional Black Caucus pushed for, by the way. Like we can legislate and litigate all of that. But what you can't say is that, this man did not help the economy, did not help after the previous president did horrible things. Obama coming in, after 2 wars with the other Bush, 3.6 million jobs in 2008 when he first came in. We were lost. We shed jobs. 800,000 jobs a month were leaving when Obama took office. Major financial institutions collapsed. Y'all remember that? One actually went out of business. Auto industry in the dumps. We were headed towards one of the worst recessions since the Great Depression. And in 8 years, Obama did what? Saved the auto industry, the economy came. So y'all can do your homework on this. And I'm not telling you, don't go to Reddit or whatever. Like, actually do your homework. There's no comparison between Democrats and Republicans in this modern era. If you want to talk about the economy, no comparison. If you want to talk about social programs, and right now, Biden took over again. We were supposed to head into a horrible recession and somehow build back better, lower prices on insulin and other drugs. All of this, your student debt forgiveness that was blocked by this Republican court. Yep. Okay. And again, like everybody, Biden and Trump are the same. They're not. The parties are not the same. The parties do not follow the same edict. Yes, we can go to Biden's personal records or whatever, but the parties do not operate the same. So can we stop doing that? And I'm not shilling for them. I'm just saying these are facts. Kevin, it's so frustrating living in a world without them.
It's very frustrating, but you're telling the truth. And it's, the thing that the folks what's been happening is that people are putting microphones in front of Black folks who are completely unqualified to talk about politics. Some of them happen to be from the hip hop community that I belong to. Some of them happen to be rappers. They're not all 20. Some of them are 40 and 50 years old. I like Trump, 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 Trump. And they're citing stuff like the stimulus checks that you just clarified where it really came from. They're citing, well, he doesn't take any mess. I'm like, he tells people off. That does not mean you're a good leader. That just means that you are rude to people. You go off on people. It doesn't mean that you actually have a vision for the country. There is no vision for the country. We need to understand that Donald Trump was a highly mediocre college student. He was born into a kind of privilege that benefited his ride into real estate. It was literally handed to him. I'm not saying people can control how they're born, what they're born into, but the reality is, we're talking about someone who literally has had most stuff handed to him his entire life. And he doesn't really even care about the people who vote for him, which are working class white people around the country. He could care less about those kind of folks. He just wants their votes. He just riles them up. He's just appealing to this kind of base white nationalism. And so, I agree with you because there's many problems with the Democratic Party as well. Don't get me even started. Where's your New Deal at? Where's your Great Society? Where's your New Deal of FDR? Where's your Great Society of Johnson in the 1960s? Where's your vision at as well? But when it comes down to the two things, on a very simple level, you're right. Be it Roe v. Wade now, affirmative action, they began attacking affirmative action back in the 1970s, the Supreme Court decision. This has been an ongoing thing. And when people don't vote in local elections, when I say local, I'm not just talking about city council, mayor, alderperson, depending if you live in a place like Chicago, they call it alder people, but also the governors, those governor seats matter, those congressional seats matter because it's also determining who ends up becoming judges. And those judges are going to knock down affirmative action, Roe v. Wade, voting rights, making it more difficult for you, immigrant rights. We can go through a list of stuff because that's what's happening because there's a philosophy. We've gone from this big tent. When I was at Vibe magazine, I did an interview with Colin Powell. When you remember back in the 90s, they were talking about him running for president in 1996 against Clinton.
Yep.
Then Bob Dole, God bless him, but him ended up running. And, Colin Powell was an old school Republican. He wasn't what we're talking about now. He was saying we need a big tent that can encapsulate everyone in the country. And how's that any different, really, than the Great Society or FDR's New Deal, which is we need to look out for everyone. But they've moved away from that. That's what you're talking about. So it's become for just about power for a handful of people. And that's why we're in the mess we're in. And then when the other party, the opposition party, the Democrat Party, doesn't have a strong vision for the party nor the country, the thing that the Republicans have, they're organized, Karen. This radical right-wing mentality that we see has emerged. It wasn't even like this. The Reagan years were bad in a lot of ways, but they weren't even like this. We lived through it. It wasn't even like this. This is fueled, in my opinion, by something that's beyond anything we could even imagine, which is we don't care about anyone. We don't care about anyone at all except for ourselves. We'll even destroy our own party. That's the difference.
Well, I'm going to say the Reagan years were worse. Nixon years were worse, and Reagan years were worse because the vision and the planning was long. These are the
children of
not just the children. I was going to say the deformed sperm of those. The sperm has got like canes and little extra chromosomes. It's like this ain't. This not that because they are literally feeding off of the vision and the planning of Ehrlichman, of the Reagan folks.
I agree with that.
Of the Southern strategy, which was to indoctrinate even Black people and others into this way of thinking, which makes it even more insidious. The fact that the Congressional Black Caucus fought for Clinton and them to pass this crime bill.
Yeah.
The fact that they weren't out there fighting to not have crack cocaine scheduled on the way it was, the 3 strikes rule, all that. The fact that Black people were like, let's clean up the streets that these people. I mean, imagine that. Ehrlichman's like, let's flood the community with this, and then Reagan was like, hold my beer, let's flood it with cocaine, crack cocaine, and then criminalize the people and demonize the folk, crack babies and all that. And that becomes like, even for Black people, a butt of jokes, right? How brilliant is that? That you can put something in that even we are like, yes, come police us more. We need more police. This is terrible.
And you're right. 1964, Barry Goldwater ran as a far right-wing Republican. That began it. Nixon got elected in 1968 and reelected in 72. Reagan got elected in 80. And then it's been that sowed the seeds of what we see today. And what I'm saying is that these folks are not even pretending to care, not even remotely. You know what I'm saying? Nixon years, he was terrible. He was a criminal. All kinds of stuff can be said by Richard Nixon, but there also affirmative action programs were put in place. There was stuff around the environment put in place. Seatbelt laws were put in place. They were at least trying to govern. These folks ain't even trying to govern. They just want to tear it all down. It's literally January 6th every single day when you talk about these folks in these present times.
It is stunning. And now, because I feel like in the 80s, at least we had some leadership. There was some leadership. I remember when Sharpton was a joke, like, because, up against, Martin, Medgar, Malcolm, do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
I'm 866. I remember it like it was yesterday. Like, really, the warm-up suits and the big medallions. What the hell are we looking at here? I remember that being a thing. Now here we are.
I run my fingers through her hair as she smiles and says that she loves me. Isn't it lovely when the one you're lusting is the one